in 1997, the United States Secretary of State Madeleine Albright gave the commencement speech to the graduating class of Mount Holyoke College, a women's college in Massachusetts. Read the following excerpt from her speech carefully. Then write a well-developed essay in which you analyze the choices Albright makes to convey her message to the audience. All right, so if we're looking at our rhetorical situation, right? We're looking at your speaker first. Okay. What do we know at her? Please don't say she's a Secretary of State. What can you infer about her from looking at this and knowing that she is Secretary of State?
Educated.
Okay, she is educated. We know she's a female, duh.
She has power.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Influential. Yes, absolutely. And here's what I want y'all to see. I want you to look at, like, when you're analyzing a piece of evidence, you can say, as an educated woman, right? Albright, blah, blah, blah. As a powerful woman, as an influential woman. So now you're using, like, her rhetorical situation in the evaluation of a piece of evidence. Does that make sense? Now, bonus question. She is the Secretary of State. What are her duties? Please don't say to be Secretary to the state. What is a Secretary of State?
She deals with the foreign affairs of the nation.
Josh, what were you going to say?
I was literally just going to say she deals with foreign affairs.
Okay, I'll tell you why I know so much about this position. Anybody else watch Madam Secretary at CBS? Anybody? Like, I do. So I'm like, okay, I know what a Secretary of State does because I've watched that show for like 3 seasons.
Seen House of Cards?
Yeah. Not the last season. Last season stunk. Okay, so foreign affairs. So she deals with like deal making, peacemaking with other countries, right? Allies. And slash enemies, right? Now listen, you're like, you use that from the TV show? Heck yeah, because that's kind of like the position that's being played by the woman that plays it is based on like Madeleine Albright, Clinton, Hillary Clinton. There's one more female, wasn't there? There's one more female. Maybe not. But that's why. All right, 1997, talking about rhetorical situation. What's happening in our country, 1997?
War in, I think is it Afghanistan at this time?
War in the Middle East.
Yeah, because this is, who's president?
Clinton.
War in Iraq.
That was 03.
So is Afghanistan then? So we're at war in the Middle East somewhere, right? Where are we? Post-Cold War, right? Okay. All right, some context to like what's happening in our country. Okay, commencement speech. So remember how we looked at the letter, right? And we've looked at an inaugural speech. So what is a commencement speech? Look at your prompt. You can at least figure out what a commencement speech is. It's a speech, oh my God, given to graduating students. This one is for college, right? What would be the purpose of a commencement speech?
Inspire.
To inspire, to motivate, yes. A commencement speech is not going to be like, man, it sucks out there. Don't go, stay in, don't graduate. I mean, some have done that, and they're actually kind of funny. But notice, like, that's what you want to look at. So when her purpose, when you're reading this, you can kind of like we did yesterday with Banneker, like, or 2 days ago at Banneker, when we were like, okay, let's see what we can gain so we can guess. We can guess that in this commencement speech, she's going to inspire the women to do something, motivate them to do something, right? And we could probably say change the world, right? That would be a good guess going into that, right? All right, so if we look at our audience, we have a women's college in Massachusetts. So let's look at our audience to the third power. Tell me about her audience. Do not say women. What about these women?
New adults.
What do you mean?
Like, they're going to be functioning in like a more adult world.
Okay, they will soon,
Cool.
yeah,
Self-sustaining.
soon be adulting in the real world. I mean, I don't know if they're self-sustaining. Some of them are probably living in their parents' basement. What else?
I would say like the future of our country.
Okay, so they could be future leaders or entrepreneurs, right? Okay. What else? The other thing that I think about is I think about their rhetorical situation, right? The women. So these women have chosen to go to an all-female school. Now, the only thing that I say is is it truly all female, right? Like Texas Women's University does say women in it. When I took Cooper there to go watch a volleyball game a couple weeks ago, there were like guys walking across campus. She was like, "Isn't this Texas Women's?" And I'm like, "Yes." She's like, "Why are there boys here?" And I'm like, settle down. So I mean, like Texas Women's, I don't know how many years ago, but it was more than 20 years ago that men started being on campus, right? So I don't know if this college is the same. However, you can say like when you choose to go to a college that is dominated by a certain group, right? Then you're choosing to go there for a reason, right? So if it is a women's college, what would be mindful about these women that we would maybe keep in mind of their situation? Okay, so you could see, I mean, people hear the word feminists and think it's a bad thing. I think it's women that want to see like empowerment of women on a campus. Also, I would say that in that situation, they know that they are going to be in an education system that supports them, doesn't question them, right? As a female. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's kind of some of the things that I would bring out in there. Read the following excerpt, write a well-developed essay in which you analyze the choices Albright makes to convey her message to the audience. So then I'm looking at like her message. So what is she inspiring them to do? Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm going to look for. Yeah. But I mean, that it's true. And I would say, like, remember how we talked about like a stable prompt, how like they're going to give us stuff? I would probably say for this one that the message to our audience would be about like persevering through hardships, right? Like they might give that to us. All right. All right. Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to start numbering. Now, just looking at this and going, holy crap, it goes to the back side. As I'm numbering, I'm going to try to look for things that might help me to break it up or might help me to like understand structure a little bit better, right? So 1 as individuals, 2 as a nation. Okay, now I'm marking. We're going from small to big just because I'm seeing individuals, nation. Berlin Wall, largely because the fighting we have in our lifetimes. Mount Holyoke is home in recent years. I met in Sarajevo, in Burundi. Okay, so I'm saying in Burundi and Sarajevo. I would say that I would probably guess there because we switched from lifetimes and like all these things to Mount Holyoke. So now the focus is on the college. In Guatemala, in Burma. Okay, so now I'm seeing those ties together. So there's something in there I need to look for. 13, these women, each has suffered. 15, as you go. Ooh, I'm noticing that now we're going to the U, so that's specific. There is still no doubt. It is certain. Inevitably. I'm noticing that those are similar. It has is 19. This morning is 20. Is that right? Do I have 20 paragraphs? And then I'm looking at 2 footnotes. All right. As individuals, each of us must choose whether to live our lives narrowly, selfishly, and complacently, or to act with courage and faith. So there's a choice. As a nation, America must choose. So I'm tying in this idea from small to big, right? Us to America. Whether to turn inward and betray the lessons of history, that would be this idea of narrowly, selfishly, complacently, or to seize the opportunity before us to shape history. So there is our choice. Today, under the leadership of President Clinton, America is making the right choice. All right, so this is the idea of that, like, America's shaping history. The Berlin Wall is now a memory. We could be satisfied with that. Instead, we are enlarging and adapting NATO and striving to create a future for Europe in which every democracy, including Russia, is our partner, and every partner is a builder of peace. All right, so military alliance. NATO is the military alliance established by the North Atlantic Treaty of April 1949. So this is 1949. So why is Russia, including Russia, why is that separated? Because what?
They're not a part of NATO.
Okay, but also, Josh, what'd you say?
They were former enemies. Or at least they were during the Cold War.
Yeah, I mean, we're just out of the Cold War, right? So we're still kind of questionable about them. But knowing that that shows that we're even including them, right? Okay. And every partner is a builder of peace. So this is the idea of we are helping to build peace. Largely because of U.S. leadership, nuclear weapons no longer target our homes. Oh, okay, so this is like the same. This is the past. This is something that was happening in the past. Berlin Wall was happening in the past. Okay, we could relax. I see this, we could. There, so there's a choice. So I noticed the structure up there. Instead, we are enlarging. Instead, we are working to reduce nuclear arsenals, further eliminate chemical weapons in the child-maiming scourge of landmines, and ratify a treaty that would ban nuclear explosions forever. So this is the president, not the president, the present and the future. So now, hopefully, did you see that continued organization? You may not have seen it in the first, you may not have seen it in this next paragraph, but hopefully by paragraph 5, you're seeing that same analysis throughout, right? The fighting in Bosnia has stopped. So again, past. We could turn our backs now and risk renewed war. Instead, we are renewing our commitment and insisting that the parties meet theirs to implement the Dayton Accords. And we are backing the War Crimes Tribunal because we believe that those responsible for ethnic cleansing should be held accountable, and those who consider rape just another tactic of war should answer for their crimes. So this is like we are helping to make things safer, right? And again, we still have the past, choice, present, and future. And we look at the Dayton Accords, and that says it was an agreement reached on the war, ending the war in Bosnia, 1995. So what I'm looking at is we're looking at like 50 years worth of progress, right? I'm kind of tying those things together. These might be all things that I'm writing down. So did you see that, honestly, did you see that in those like up to paragraph 5? Did you see those things? Yes? Did you hear those things? Okay, hopefully you did hear those things. I will say if you can analyze organization of how things are organized, that's going to be a higher level essay. Rather than just looking at words, you're going to look at how those things are organized. Pranav?
When you're analyzing organization, like I was trying to do that yesterday, but I couldn't figure out like how to embed text for that.
I'll show you. The first sample that we're doing today is for that reason, to show you that. Yeah. I haven't shown you it earlier because I feel like this one really lends itself to that, so I'll show you. We have built a growing world economy in which those with modern skills and available capital have done very well. Okay, there's the past again. We could stop there. Instead, so again, choice. Instead, we are pursuing a broader prosperity in which those entrapped by poverty and discrimination are empowered to share, and in which every democracy on every continent will be included. All right, so again, we look at all the things that the U.S. has done to help, right? These are all the things that we have stepped in to do. So that was like our role as a country. In our lifetimes, we have seen enormous advances in the status of women. So again, notice that even though it's a different start, it is still the past, right? We could now lower our voices and, as some suggest, sit sedately down. We being women, right? There's your antecedent. So that is our choice. Instead, women everywhere, whether bumping against a glass ceiling or rising from a dirt floor, are standing up, spreading the word that we are ready to claim our rightful place as full citizens and full participants in every society on earth. So again, that is the present and the future. What is this metaphorical glass ceiling? What does that mean? What is a glass ceiling?
Like the limits.
It's limits. So it's not just a ceiling, it's a glass ceiling, which means if you literally have a ceiling above you that is glass, what can you do?
Break it.
You could break it, yes. You can see what's on the other side. So a glass ceiling, you're like, break it. Okay, violent people. Hello. So a glass ceiling, right, is you're stopped at a limit, but you can see others doing more than you, right? So it's used a lot for firsts, right? Like President Obama broke the glass ceiling of the first African American president, right? For centuries, we have seen white men become that. Now we can do more, right? Hillary Clinton used it a lot in her campaign, right? That she broke through the glass ceiling of women being a nominee of their party, right? That broke through. You don't know unless you know, but Albright was the same. She was the first woman Secretary of State, right? So she is speaking of that. And then the idea of rising from the dirt, she literally means like people coming from like this place of nothing and creating themselves, right? All right. Mount Holyoke is the home, to borrow Wendy Wasserstein's phrase, of uncommon women. But we know that there are uncommon women in all corners of the globe. Okay, so this is her audience of uncommon women. And we look at that as being a positive, right? That's a good thing. In recent years, I have met in Sarajevo with women weighted down by personal grief, reaching out across ethnic lines to rebuild their shattered society. Okay, so these are personal examples, or these not, well, or they're anecdotes, right? And I would say it's not, it does two things. This serves two purposes, I think. It serves the purpose of her showing these women that are making differences within their community, but then it also shows her experience of not just saying this is what's happening in our country, these are things that I have seen around the world, right? It's kind of a humble brag of look at all the things that I have influenced, right? In Burundi, I've seen women taking the lead in efforts to avoid the fate of neighboring Rwanda, where violence left 3/4 of the population female and 1/2 of the women widows. So if I'm looking at Sarajevo, isn't Sarajevo like a war-torn country, right? So if I'm looking over here and I'm looking at this idea of chemical weapons, isn't Sarajevo the chemical weapons? Isn't that where? Yes, no, maybe? So I'm looking at like the tie across. So what she used as an example in the country, right? This is something that happened here. Same thing for Burundi, right? This idea of yeah, where is that up here? There it is. Yes. In Guatemala, I have talked to women striving to ensure that their new place endures, as is accompanied by justice and an end to discrimination and abuse. Here we go here. Right? In Burma, I have met with a remarkable woman named Aung San Suu Kyi. Anybody? Am I close? Who risks her life every day to keep alive the hope for democracy in her country. Right? So I'm tying that up to there. So she showed us all the aspects that the U.S. has made changes in and how those changes are specifically affecting women. Right? So these are all examples of women making change. Okay? These women have in common a determination to chart their own path, and by doing so, to alter for the better the course of their country or community. Each suffered blows, but each has proceeded with courage. Each has persevered. As you go, so here I would say this is like the point of her. And I know that we talk about like not using the language of the text, but this one I would say like if you use the idea of persevering, I would say I was okay with that because she uses it so often, and that, I mean, what else are you going to say? Like that's your big idea, is this idea of persevering through what and why.
Can you use perseverance as abstract though?
I think I literally just said that.
Because
I know, because I've said not to use the language, but that's what I'm saying, where here I feel like, and I also feel like if we were going to use a stable prompt, that they would give us like the perseverance. But I think where we can say in order to show what? In order to show that women can achieve more than what's expected of them, right? So we could still use that in order to phrase to move it bigger for the perseverance, right? As you go along your own road in life. Okay, so now I think this is a direct address. Not that she wasn't addressing them before, but now we're looking at specifically, now she's like, we have gone from how the U.S. has made changes to how women have made changes to now how you can make a change. So we become more myopic, right? All right. As you go along your own road in life, you will, if you aim high enough, also meet resistance. For as Robert Kennedy once said, if there's nobody in your way, it's because you're not going anywhere. But no matter how tough the opposition may seem, have courage still and persevere. So I'm just jotting down like they will, like a direct address that they will meet resistance. There is no doubt if you aim high enough, oh, that sounds familiar, that you will be confronted by those who say that your efforts to change the world or improve the lot of those around you do not mean much in the grand scheme of things. So this is like, these are hypothetical, but think about her as a female Secretary of State, representing one of the most powerful countries in the world, going to the other countries. Do you think that there's many women in her position? Not many, no. So even though this is hypothetical, do you think it's a hypothetical that she has gone through? Absolutely. But no matter how impotent you may sometimes feel, have courage still and persevere. So this is this hypothetical conversation of people saying that you can't change anything. And I think this goes back to the examples, right? So those women that she gave examples of probably had the same thing said to them. It is certain, if you aim high enough, that you will find your strongest beliefs ridiculed and challenged. So I feel like now that I'm looking at this, like, no doubt, it is certain, and then inevitable. Those are all things. But I kind of feel like looking at the last structure, again, those first couple sentences are hypothetical, but I'm sure they're hypothetical from her past, right? And why is she not making it about her? Like, in the past, I have, right? Because she's using her experience to help them to better understand their own experiences, right? Principles that you cherish may be derisively dismissed by those claiming to be more practical or realistic than you. So others saying that they are better than you. But no matter how weary you may become in persuading others to see the value in what you value, have courage still and persevere. Inevitably, if you aim high enough, you will be buffeted by demands of family, friends, and employment that will conspire to distract you from your course. So people are trying to change your focus. But no matter how difficult it may be to meet the commitments you have made, have courage still and persevere. It has been said that all work that is worth anything is done in faith. This morning, in these beautiful surroundings, at this celebration of warm memory and high expectation, I summon you in the name of this historic college and all of those who have passed through its halls to embrace the faith that your courage and your perseverance will make a difference, and that every life enriched by your giving, every friend touched by your affection, every soul inspired by your passion, and every barrier to justice brought down by your determination will ennoble your own life, inspire others, serve your country, and explode outward the boundaries of what is achievable on this earth. So that again is that glass ceiling reference. So, couple of things. I would have probably said in planning, instead of planning a T-chart, I might have probably divided this up into thirds. Just because it was so big, I probably would have divided it up into like paragraphs 1 through 7, and then probably 8 through 14, and then 15 through 20. And with that, I probably would have done maybe one long extended chunk in each one of them. And I'll show you what that looks like. You ready? Okay. On your chart that I gave you, any questions about the annotations so far? How many of you spent that much time in your prompt? Naughties. Nobody? Nobody spent that much time in their prompt? So, more than the last time, that's good. That's a change. So we do want to, these are my copies, so don't write on these, please. Hopefully I have enough because they've been slipping away each period. So if you guys will look on the chart you have, if you'll flip to the last page and flip to F, I actually kind of like did this backwards. So your chart goes from the worst to the best, but we are going to read this from like the best one first so I can work through that with you today. So turn to the chart where it's SAF. All right, I'm going to go over SAF with you. So do not write on my page, but use your chart to analyze, all right? So if you'll notice, the only thing that I changed on your chart is that bottom part that says, Jeff, let me see your chart real quick. The only thing that I changed on this chart is the bottom where it says final commentary of paper, right? So you're still going to analyze or jot down all the things you see. Final commentary of paper, what I want here are things that you see in the paper that you think are interesting, things that they do that you may not have done, things that you see that you were like, ooh, in my paper I did this, but I didn't analyze it to that, right? Or like Pranav, like we were talking like organization. If you see this one, analyze the organization of the paragraphs, and then you jot that down, right? Big stack of papers in the front. All right, here we go. So I'm starting on F, and notice what we did is, don't write on my paper, but if you notice at the top of your chart where the letter is, again, I wrote the score, 1, 4, 1. The other thing you need to get out is you need to get out your scoring rubric, the one we got from Monday. Top right-hand corner where all the papers are. All right, here we go. So I'm going to tell you what I like in here, and you can mark in your chart. Remember, you're marking on essay letter F, right? All right, here we go. Madeleine Albright's commencement speech in 1997 at Mount Holyoke College came at a time of peace and prosperity for American society. Okay. So things that I'm marking down, remember not to mark this on your chart or on your paper, but on your chart. So this kid understands the historical context in which this essay is taking place, right? Or the speech is taking place. However, in the speech, she urges her audience to seek out problems that still exist in the world and help to fix them. Like, I like that. I think that probably could be part of our in order to, right? We persevere in order to find problems and fix them. But this, for me, shows that this kid has an understanding of the passage as a whole, right? But referencing the efforts of marginalized women who are fighting to make a difference, utilizing powerful diction and repetition, you know I hate that, and illustrating American efforts to improve the world even further, Albright inspires a young generation of graduate students on the brink of adulthood. So that's what Sandy said, right? So this is recognizing our audience. Check. With the future in their hands to never settle, always persevere, and fight to elevate the status of women around the world. So for me, this last part specifically is a really good thesis. I don't necessarily know if we need this, like the part from but to further. So for me, if we look at the idea of this one, obviously will earn the thesis point of a 1 because there it is. But also, if I'm looking at this idea of crafting a thesis that demands a nuanced consideration, I'm going to say that it is a nuanced thesis, because nuance meaning like subtle differences in meaning, like it's unique, it's insightful. Already, by looking at the intro, I know this kid understands the passage and understands the context of it and understands like the rhetorical situation in itself. So for me, I'm already going to read this paper as a high-level paper. Hopefully they still give it to me after I'm like reading into their body paragraphs, right? But for me, I'm going to look at the sophistication point and say +1 and put a question mark by it, because I feel like it's leading me the opportunity to give them that sophistication point. All right. Albright cites powerful stories of women fighting challenges they face to demonstrate the power of perseverance. All right, so that's like the big idea that they're talking about, and yes, it is perseverance. But again, this is like the second third of the paper. So I'm wondering what happened to that, because this is jumping to the women, right? The examples of women. So I'm wondering what happened to the first part. But I don't care, I'm just going to read it, right? She discusses women in Sarajevo who have overcome incredible grief to rebuild their shattered society, and Aung San Suu Kyi, a woman in Burma who risks her life every day to keep alive the hope for democracy in her country. Okay, so there's the support we're looking at. These stories exemplify pathos, appeals to emotion, and support Albright's core idea. For me, that sentence says nothing. Now, if it gave me, like, what emotion does it appeal to, right? Or how it supports her core idea, then I might give them that. But for me, I'm pretending like it's not there because it didn't really say anything, right? At a time when peace and prosperity spanned across America, okay, they're going back up to top to looking at their rhetorical situation, it would have been easy for Americans to ignore the challenges that many face and remain content with the current state of society. Okay, Albright uses, so that's true, but I'm not real sure what it's going back to. Albright uses the stories of these women to illustrate, there's our marker verb, how many problems still exist, okay, there is purpose, and to inspire her audience into helping fight those problems, okay, more purpose. Even though the stories Albright tells come from different parts of the globe, she connects them all by referencing the incredible determination that lies at the center of each story, purpose. She hopes her audience members will adopt that determination for themselves. Going back to her audience, purpose. So what we see that's different from ours is that there's only one quote unquote chunk in there, right? But it is an extensive part, and they are referencing, I would say, all of the stories of the women, not just these two. Does that make sense? Because he talked about the idea of all the stories of the women. So, Pranav, to answer your question, part of it, when there's so much, here's my fear of showing you this, a couple of things. One, this kid is paraphrasing pieces of evidence, which I'm okay with, but then giving me pieces of embedded text with it. So there's a fine balance between paraphrasing and embedded text. There is a difference between summary and paraphrase. This is what I call like a direct paraphrase, where I can go back to the text and put my finger on what they're talking about. Summary would be like all of this. Paraphrase is more direct. And when you look at that, it's hard to paraphrase the organization, but you can, it's hard to give a direct quote of all the evidence, but you could paraphrase what's happening in each part of the paragraph, right? So there's a fine line. I haven't showed you paraphrasing up to this point because we still struggle just to embed a piece of text, right? But those of you that are getting 3s, I think you probably could start to move into the idea of this balance between paraphrasing and knowing when to paraphrase and knowing when to use a direct quote. Albright utilizes frequent repetition and powerful tone to emphasize many of her points further. Again, for me, that says nothing. That's not an assertion. But because that's what I believe should be there, I'm going to move past it and just pretend like it's not really there. Okay? From lines 69 to 93, Albright ends each paragraph with the words, "Have courage still and persevere." So, okay, she repeats, so there is her support. She repeats these words to emphasize the need to continue fighting for what you believe, even in the face of doubt and criticism. Okay, so that would be summary. This is especially applicable to Albright's audience of female college graduates. Okay, so now we're getting into purpose and the rhetorical situation. Because of their youth, check, and sometimes because of their gender. Ooh, that's very good. They will all face fierce opposition at some point, and they may face people who don't take them seriously. Okay, that's purpose. Albright reiterates the need to push through in the face of these challenges. Okay, Albright herself, the first female Secretary of State, bonus points for you because you know something outside of what was given to you, faced many challenges and doubts on her rise to the top of the State Department, but she maintained her courage and persevered. Okay, that is purpose, right? Because she is more credible because of that tie. Therefore, Albright's background and story give the words "have courage still and persevere" particularly powerful and sincere meaning. Okay-ish. Albright ends the passage with a powerful call to action that uses lofty metaphorical language to inspire her audience. Okay, I'm pretending that's not there because I don't know what metaphorical lofty language you're talking about, right? Are you talking about the glass ceiling? I don't know. I'm not sure, and I'm working too hard to figure it out. So I'm moving past that. She tells her audience that their passion can bring down, this should be a R, bring down barriers to justice and ennoble their lives. These words contribute to the inspirational tone of the speech. Okay, that's purpose-ish. But it's still pretty solid, right? All right. Albright references several efforts to improve the world to contribute to the never settle aspect of her theme. Okay, so now we're going back to the beginning. So this for me is out of order. But again, I'm looking past that. Why? Because we score this at 1. I believe that we should do chronological. Nothing in everything that we say says it has to be chronological. I think it just makes sense. But 2, we also grade this. When we're at the reading, we grade it and we say, okay, if this kid had, let's say, 30 minutes to go back and revise and edit, they might move this body paragraph, right? Or they might add an assertion here, right? So we grade it as a draft. So know that, right? But she says that America could be satisfied with the fall of the Berlin Wall, but that is instead improving NATO and promoting peace. So this is where we're talking about the organization part, Pranav. The U.S. could be satisfied with the lack of a nuclear threat, but instead continues to pursue nuclear disarmament. Okay, so there's a paraphrase. The structure of the opening paragraphs is built to illustrate the importance of constantly pushing forward. So I think that isn't purpose of the organization. I think it could be better. But still, for somebody to understand why did she open that way, it's to show that the U.S. strove to get better. And then I think a better tie for this even would be like to show that those stories also showed how we impacted women in other countries. That showed how we impact you specifically as a graduate, right? Albright, this extends from a discussion of political issues into a discussion of issues faced by women. So that's that last part, right? Albright argues that women should not settle for their current status after years of progress. They should continue pushing forward in the name of even more progress. Okay, so I would say this is a paraphrase, and that last sentence is purpose-ish. But still pretty thorough. I don't like the conclusion, and we've always talked about the conclusion. I would rather you, in our 5-minute breakdown of the conclusion, I would rather you spend 3 more minutes on a body paragraph than 5 minutes trying to craft a crappy conclusion. I would like at least 1 sentence for you to show me that you have finished, that you know you've come to a complete end of your body paragraph, right? Because all this last one does is paraphrase what the intro said already, right? But if we're looking at the scores, if we're looking at between a 2, 3, and 4, all of these, they make textual references, right? That part's good. So we look at their commentary. Does it repeat, oversimplify, or misinterpret? Not at all. Is it uneven, limited, or incomplete? I mean, there are parts where I said you could do more, but is it limited throughout? No. Is it incomplete at all? No. So I would say that's why we look at the 4, because it is consistently and explicitly explaining the relationship between the evidence and the thesis. So that's why it would get a 4 for me in that. Now, the sophistication point, I think it gets because the nuanced thesis, right? And they actually proved that nuanced thesis. I would say explaining the significance of the relevance of the text purpose within a broader context, within the role of women, within the role of her position as a Secretary of State. I would say that. And then I would say recognizing and accounting for contradictions or complexities. And I think the complexity of the organization of the body paragraphs. So those things I think are consistent throughout, which is why I would give it that sophistication point as well. Pranav.
So when we're dealing with like long texts like this one,
Yeah.
is it okay to kind of move away from the format of like no conjunctions in your thesis or like only one assertion, like stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, yes. So the reason why I give you the tools of 2 body paragraphs is because in a stressful situation, will those 2 still get you a passing score? Absolutely, right? If you feel the need to, okay, I really am pleading too much here, I feel like there's another assertion I can make, then I want you to go to that. But we've kind of stuck to that, like, this is my tool, because we're going to use that tool when we move into argument and when we move into synthesis, right? As far as our thesis, I would say those of us that are getting 3s, yes, we can move into those thesis statements with conjunctions, because I think those are going to be our nuanced thesis. But with that, I also think our in order to statements are going to lead us into a nuanced thesis too, but also too. That sophistication point we're not going to see a lot. So I don't want us to get too convoluted, but still be clear and to the point and doing a higher level. I'm telling you, if we continue to analyze the stuff that we are looking at, to the rhetorical situation, to that bigger idea, and go into the in order to, we should be in the 4 or 5 out of 6 range for a majority of us if we're doing that right. Yes.
Yesterday, what I think happened was that I was like kind of hung up on the format and everything, so I was like really kind of like limited what I could actually do.
Yeah. And I'm going to say if you're scoring a 3 in rhetorical analysis, then you can kind of move into a different format. Knowing that you're still kind of want to follow that basic structure, but if you feel like, okay, with this one I could have done this, then I would say go that way, right? If we're 1s and 2s in evidence and commentary, then we're still struggling just to find the evidence, right? Ellie, did you have a question?
Yeah, so for like the actual AP exam, do you get like a chunk of time to write your 3 essays, or do they divide it?
Good question. You have a running clock, 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Right,
Yeah.
So you have to like pace yourself.
You have to pace yourself. We do give prompts, or whoever's proctoring your exam says, 40 minutes have allotted. You are encouraged to move to question number 2. This is why we take a mock exam in the spring, so y'all can feel it. Your first essay that you should be writing is synthesis, and you get 15 extra minutes to read the sources, because it's like kind of like a DBQ. And then you have 40 minutes. What happens is, so you basically have 55 minutes to read and write your synthesis essay. What happens is a lot of kids end up spending like an hour 20 on it. So you feel like you would have 40 minutes on the rhetorical analysis, and you get to rhetorical analysis and you have 25. So we'll talk about timing and how to manage your full timing later, right? But yeah, you have to manage your own time. That's why I am like militaristic right now on 10 minute, 5 minute, 10, 10, 5, so that you can kind of keep track of that yourself, because you're going to have to move yourself through that. In the spring, though, we'll talk about it a little bit.